Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of TODDRICK. And as you can see in the title, our first episode is going to be about the Zack Snyder Justice League cut for HBO Max. Now, I am one of the many people who thought for the past 4 years that this movie was never going to be made. It was a, complete waste of time, and everyone, is just wasting their time. Release the Snyder Cut. It's never gonna happen. And here I am. I'm wrong. And you know what? That's fine. It's 100% fine to be wrong. No matter who you are, what you're doing, just know it's always fine to be wrong. 'Cause that's how we learn. What are my thoughts on this? Well, it's very much two-pronged. I'm very happy that a film director gets to make his version of a movie. I'm very happy when someone in any media gets to make the thing that they want to make. Their passion, their drive, the reason they got into what they're doing in the first place is to do that thing. And he's going to get to do his thing. On the other hand, my personal preference, I don't care for Zack Snyder's DC Universe. I greatly enjoyed 300 and Watchmen. Dawn of the Dead's okay. Sucker Punch is good until that last 30 minutes or so. Then it just kind of completely falls apart. But Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and Justice League, the theatrical version, I don't care for those. And I know there might be someone who says, well, Joss Whedon put his spin on Justice League. Well, Joss Whedon also directed Avengers and Age of Ultron, and they're fine movies in of themselves. Joss Whedon worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's not like Joss Whedon didn't have talent and was just, he came in and he ruined it. I feel like excuse me. I feel like Zack Snyder had a vision, and his vision didn't quite fall in line with as a comic book fan, as a fan of the Justice League, as a fan of Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Aquaman, Cyborg, The Flash. It didn't fall into my view of things. It didn't fall into what I expect from a comic book universe. And it's okay that things don't fall in line of what you expect. If we all, 100 people could go in and write a superhero movie for one superhero, and I imagine that you'd probably get 100 different scripts, because everybody wants a little something different, and that's fine. Zack Snyder's DC Extended Universe is not what I'm excited about. I am, however, excited at the prospect of Zack Snyder getting the chance to redo Justice League. Will I subscribe to HBO Max to watch Justice League? Well, that depends. As of right now, no. Honestly, no. I really don't see myself subscribing to yet another streaming service in the prospect to see a movie that I didn't care for possibly be recut into a movie I could like even less, or I could like slightly more. The prospect of Zack Snyder getting to redo Justice League opens up a huge door, however, for other directors. And that's what I'm excited for. I would love to see the David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. I didn't care for the Suicide Squad movie either. I'd love to see Colin Trevorrow's Star Wars Episode 9. I would absolutely love to see Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, or Fant Four Stick, or whatever the hell you want to call that movie. I'd love to see an unabashed Edgar Wright version of Ant-Man. And now, for the most part, some of those are possible. At least the David Ayer Suicide Squad is at least somewhat plausible. Josh Trank and Edgar Wright, I think, burned a lot of bridges. And, I mean, honestly, if we could get any kind of different version of the Rise of Skywalker, I mean, I feel like that'd be a win-win in anyone's camp. I'm not going to say that I don't like Zack Snyder's directorial style. Zack Snyder is great with slow motion, with visual effects. He is a talented director. Very few people could do what he could do. I honestly think Batman vs. Superman is better being the 3-hour-long extended cut. It cuts out, it doesn't cut out. It ties up a lot of the kind of plot hole, like silly things, like, why did they think these people who were mowed down with gunfire were killed by Superman? Like, silly crap like that. But that's just a personal opinion. I think Watchmen is better, the director's cut. I never sat down and watched the ultimate cut with the cartoon stuff added into it. But when you set out to make something and you are given the freedom to make that and to make it your own, it becomes far better than a movie studio kind of going in and meddling. And that's part of what happened. I know the full story is Zack Snyder was working on Justice League. Warner Brothers didn't like the response that, Batman vs. Superman was getting. Zack Snyder's adopted daughter had committed suicide, and that left Zack Snyder emotionally unequipped to finish working on a project that so many people were already kind of like, well, we don't think he's qualified to do this. I don't like Batman vs. Superman. I hated Batman vs. Superman, and I thought it was okay, but I think someone else should do justice. Like, all that negativity from the studio standpoint brought on top of family tragedy, I could understand why he left. And Warner Brothers did a really shitty thing by bringing in Joss Whedon. That felt like a slap in the face to me, honestly. Zack Snyder had been working for the competition. He'd been working for Marvel, and their directorial styles are polar opposites. I mean, they both are, like, Justice League, Batman vs. Superman, and Avengers are both about superheroes coming together to fight a bigger threat than one superhero could take on, and those movies are completely and totally and absolutely polar opposites. And hiring a director who is the polar opposite of your directorial style to finish your project, your baby, I feel like that was probably a big slap in the face to him. And this is just an opinion. This whole thing has been an opinion. Excuse me again. I promise I do not have the coronavirus. I do want directors to be able to fulfill their vision. And I do know that Marvel Studios and Disney have a very cut and dry, like, this is how we're going to do things, and if you don't comply, then goodbye, attitude. And it has worked very well for Disney and Marvel, and not so much for Warner Brothers. Aquaman's doing well, Wonder Woman did well, Shazam did well, Man of Steel, BVS, Justice League, not as well. Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey, not so well. But then you take a movie that's not connected to the DCEU, like Joker, and Joker won an Oscar. Joker was not a superhero movie. It's not a supervillain movie. It's a movie about a mentally ill man in a society, disenfranchised. And in the world we're living in right now, where the disenfranchised are rising up, I think it spoke to a lot of people. I think it will continue to speak to a lot of people. I don't think the DCEU is a good idea anymore. I really like the idea of Warner Brothers going in and making separate movies for their franchises. And they can acknowledge that the DCEU existed, but to try and take these characters and slap them all together in a singular film, some of them being introduced for 5 to 10 seconds in a previous film, like the amount of backstory exposition, like, I don't think it was a good idea. I don't think the DCEU was a good idea in any way, shape, or form. Warner Brothers is too invested in these characters to do a full-blown reboot, and I think it would be too soon anyways. I want someone to convince me to watch the Zack Snyder Justice League. Because I needed someone to convince me to watch the theatrical cut of Justice League after watching Batman vs. Superman. These are characters that I've grown up with, and if you're listening to this, you've probably grown up with these characters too, and you want them to succeed. I don't wish ill will upon Zack Snyder. I think he's a very fine director. At the same time, he's the same guy who said, I can make a movie where Batman could get raped in prison. Paraphrasing, but I don't want to see that. I don't think the general public wants to see that. I think that's something Zack Snyder wants to see. I want any movie director to be able to make the film they want to make. Because studio meddling, we know it has made some good movies into bad movies. It's all a balance game, and it's always going to be a balance game. I'm excited for the possibilities that Zack Snyder's Justice League movie opens up. If they were able to bring back Ben Affleck again as Batman, or Henry Cavill as Superman, because let's face it, Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot aren't going anywhere. I'd love to see that. I think the casting was fine, apart from Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I want this to succeed. I want someone to convince me to see it. But everything in my gut tells me no. So I'll leave it up to you. Convince me to subscribe to HBO Max and watch this movie. Convince me that Zack Snyder deserves another chance for me. Because I'm not in a position to convince you. Anyways, I thank you for tuning in to Talk TODDRICK. These are all my opinions, and you're welcome to not share those opinions. And you're welcome to call me out on any mistakes that I make, because there is nothing wrong with being wrong. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.